Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy. This is Tim Jousma, and joining me all the way in Portland, Maine, it is the holiest of holies. It is the Reverend Tracy. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing pretty swell, Tim. Spinning up on the holidays. So I've got a huge sack of yarn and various craft things, and I am ready to get my crafting on because I make a lot of stuff this time of year. As a
Nice.
surprise to probably nobody, I'm not big on the materialism that is buying a bunch of shit that people are going to forget in 5 weeks. So I try to make things that people will forget in 3 weeks. So that is what I do to put out there for Christmas. How are you doing this week?
Well, it's nice to be able to sit. That for one.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Last week we ended up not being able to record because I just was not feeling good. So it's great to be able to be back in the saddle again, recording. And it did suck last week not recording as well. And we mentioned this off air because I was so proud of the fact that we were like 1 week ahead, and then it just took 1 week to fuck that all up.
Yeah, we were doing so good, so well, some
Yes.
might say. Some of the
Yeah.
grammatically persnickety would say we have done well.
At times here, but yeah, we definitely have plans to build that back up over time. And again, it's nice to be able to sit. So, but you did mention the time of year. We, as we record tomorrow, it is Thanksgiving, and we
Yeah.
are close to Christmas as well. And I know you had something you wanted to bring up about the holidays. Tell folks about
Yeah, so just a little bit of a topic that I touch on occasionally, for anybody that follows any of my more mental healthy stuff with the There Is Life After Trauma page, which may spin off into something bigger at some point, but that might be a reveal for later, like after the holidays. But essentially, something that I've been trying to bring up, and something that I do try to touch base with some friends on this time of year, is just the general idea of, yeah, this is a fun family holiday season. We've got Thanksgiving and Christmas back to back, which can come with an influx of all sorts of things, including the adorable meme sharing that is all
it.
about family love and family awesome times. And that's great. Honestly, there's people that give the holiday season shit for various reasons. You give Valentine's Day crap, but then you've also got the people that are like, well, but it also reminds you to go out of your way and be thankful for things, right? So
Mhm.
I am very much usually those people. Like I am that kind of person when it comes to holidays. Like I get it. The Thanksgiving is to kind of give us a day to remember to be thankful for whatever. Granted, it's turned more into a family centered thing, which we'll get to in a minute. And then Christmas is also that societal reminder yearly of family and all those things. And also like a lot of purchasing and gift giving, but that's the other side of that too.
Yeah.
But the things that we see more on the social media tends to be with the memes and the family love and everything. And I guess this is really a long-winded way of saying that unfortunately there's just a lot of demographic out there. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, we all know at least one friend who is the black sheep of their family. They've probably been open about their daddy issues. Me. Um, so those people exist out there too. And unfortunately, it's kind of a weird time of year for a lot of us. It took a long time for me to reframe it, honestly. I used to get very much bah humbuggy this time of year. And a lot of it was because of those messages, right? Because when you've got that kind of not so great relationship with your family, and you hear family, 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 and family is love and all of these things, and you should remember your family and don't forget, your mother who loved you and your father who da da da, it can be actually and understandably triggering for people who maybe come from homes of neglect or homes where unfortunately abuse did occur. These
Yeah.
things do happen. That is the darker end of the spectrum of some of your friends who may have some of those issues with their family. So, all that to be said, is even if you don't know why your friend has issues with their family, maybe this is like the year to reach out and bring them into our tribes a little bit. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying don't share your family memes because it might hurt someone's feels, but just an awareness out there that you might have some friends this season that doesn't even know how to reach out to say that they would like to be around people because there's so much emphasis on family that it kind of almost makes you feel alone all over again. So I guess I could have written that to make it more succinct. I chose to not, so you guys got verbal diarrhea of the Reverend Tracy. doing your best at explaining that, you know, there's people that exist that this isn't a happy time of year. So just don't forget them
Oh
while you're
yeah.
doing your family time and your emphasis on remembering your family. But maybe there's some friends out there that are on the family level too, you can think about.
Oh yeah, I remember back in 2016, like right after my divorce, and like the when I was married, my wife was pretending to be a Jehovah's Witness at the time, so we didn't do any sort of holidays at all. But my first chance of freedom, you know, obviously you spend 14 years not celebrating anything. I didn't really think about doing anything for the holidays until a coworker just put something up on Facebook's, you know, stating like, you know, hey, my parents live on the other side of the country, so if anybody doesn't have anybody for Thanksgiving, come on over to my place. I did, a few other coworkers did, and that was an awesome night, you know. So I concur. Yeah, like it, you know, be mindful of other people out there, and also Portland, Oregon being what it is, we have a lot of like pilgrims essentially, you know, coming in from all over the world. Like maybe they want to be with their family, but if their family is on the other side of the country, they can't be there. So
Yeah, there's that
yeah.
aspect too. These generations, our most current generations of humans, are the most like mobile. We move about the country, and so just
Mm-hmm.
more of us are also without our family, which also sucks for those people that feel lonely for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, I chose to leave, but some people, you know, didn't choose to leave behind everybody they left behind, and that can also be kind of a sucky time of year for people like that. I know for me, reframing it came working with Santa. When I started working for Santa, and that is like I started doing photography and being a Santa's helper, I
Mm-hmm.
think that's when I actually started enjoying Christmas. But before then, I used to nab up hosting an orphan Thanksgiving.
Mm.
And that was me just making a turkey because, you know, I wanted to be able to cook. I've learned a lot that I love to cook for people. So I did that, glammed onto it. And for a good number of years there, I did orphan Thanksgiving. This year, we're going to be doing something different. We're running our own self-imposed 5K for a little charity. And then we're gonna go to the VFW for their hosted dinner. So,
Yeah.
what are your plans for Thanksgiving this year? Do you have anything big for
Uh,
tomorrow? I guess I should say. What are you doing tomorrow,
yeah.
Tim?
Yeah. Well, yeah, this is going to be pretty big. I am going to be going with the professor to the professor's parents' house. So, two folks that I know listen to the show on a regular basis, Bob and Kathy Baldwin. I will be having Thanksgiving dinner with them and with Aubrey's sister and brother-in-law. You know, so that will be interesting. Yeah,
I'm
I
sure
mean,
we will both have interesting stories
yeah, yeah, no,
based on conversations that will happen at the Thanksgiving dinner table.
yeah, no, no. I don't want to give the impression that I'm like dreading it or anything. It's gonna be fun. Like, I've met almost everybody in Aubrey's family except for her father on her birthday, and me being me, you know how tough it is for me to talk to other people. I still ended up having a decent conversation with them, so it was fine. You know, I was able to break out of my shell just a little bit.
Oh,
So
so proud of you. Look at those communication skills just growing as you groom them.
yes, I know now about 4 words to say. But no, but yeah, that is definitely going to be fun, and I also expect to talk a lot about the podcast tomorrow as well, since Bob and Kathy both listen to the podcast on a regular basis and talk with Aubrey about it. So I'm going to talk about the show.
Oh, good. Well, you know, if there's any feedback, just try to figure out how to phrase it in a way that won't make me cry, and then I will do my best from there. Solid
Well,
agreement.
well, they're from Tennessee too, so maybe I'll just start it off with a bless your heart, and I don't
Oh no, you don't say that to people from the South, don't you know?
know. Don't you know?
Don't you know? See, I'm using a northern thing to talk about a southern thing.
There you go. Yeah. All right. So that is good news there. And again, you are correct. If there are people in your life that this time of year just need some cheering up, just be mindful, be empathetic, and go out of your way to just show some love, because family, at the end of the day, is who you make it. You know, you
Oh,
can make your own family.
exactly.
You know, and yeah.
And a lot of that holiday feeling is about like love for fellow man too. So
Mm,
it's more just throwing it out there. It's like, just don't forget to include some of those people, you know, if you can, if it's in your heart to do so. We are
yeah.
out there. We're not weird. We just don't have any plans because we haven't seen a functional holiday, so we don't know how to have one.
Yes, we're crawling out of cave, seeing lights for the first time. I don't know. Anyway, let's talk about an interesting news story that happened last week. Apparently, it is now legal in Wisconsin to come in from anywhere in the world and start shooting people you disagree with. The Kyle Rittenhouse verdict came in. And of course, my introduction was hyperbolic, but not by much. And Kyle Rittenhouse was found not guilty on all charges, which blew your mind, blew my mind, blew everybody's mind, except for a bunch of conservative folks in this country.
Well, I mean, there was a red flag, I think, very early on how this was going to go. And I don't know who all was aware of what, because I've been very clear I don't follow a lot of news channels. I'm very persnickety about who I take in, because if you're guilty of the headline embellishment for manipulation, I just don't feel comfortable following people. So I've taken in my information a bit differently. And I actually do know about this one. I know I don't always know what's going on in the world, but the Kyle Rittenhouse thing I did actually follow to a tune and have opinions on it. But yeah, so early on, so remind me the state, just because I keep forgetting what state this was in.
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, thank you. So in the state of Wisconsin, it is illegal for a child under the age of 18 to have a firearm, unless between the ages of 16 and 17, you can carry a long gun for hunting purposes. And I want to say it said that in there. It was a long time ago, because this was early. This was something that got written off. The jury never got to hear about this shit, okay? And this was the thing that I was like, oh well, yeah, this is how this is going to go. And if I didn't talk about it because people were already arguing, and I think you at least know, if not our listenership also knows, like, I just don't like the fighting that happens
Yeah.
over these things. I'm down for discussion, but with the name calling and the shit that happens, and that's really why I try to stay out of expressing opinions about it, is just like, I don't want it happening on my wall. Go fight somewhere else, just not in my space. So anywho, so anyway, 16 to 17 you can carry a long gun, right, for hunting. So I guess the judge decided that he didn't like how that all stuff was phrased anyway, and that because the AR was the minimum barrel length to technically be considered a long gun, decided it was okay, and it never saw court. Now that was the point where I was like, well, that would have been what he was actually no shit guilty of. That would have been literally the smoking gun. Because not only like, and first of all, let's go into the whole point of that is really so like your parents or your uncle or maybe your close neighbor friend could take your kid hunting. That
Yeah.
was the real purpose of that. Okay. It wasn't so your child's friend could go and buy them a gun. Because I guess that was one of the things that, like, well, that's a lie and discrediting, was that supposedly the mother had gotten it for him. She had not. It was a friend. And to me, that makes it even worse, because again, if you go back to the intent of some of these laws, it was not for your friend to get you a gun. It was so you could go hunting. So
Yeah.
I am still mind blown that before this even started, that I saw this little blurb about how this judge made this decision. And I hate to say that this kind of played out how I thought it would from that point. Like, it, it I think I'm done. I think that's just like where my brain just hits a wall with that conversation. Is like, I can't understand how that wasn't the thing that he was guilty of, just because a judge decided, well, I don't like that statute and how it's written anyway. Like, I don't like that. Like, I guess that's how I read it. And again, maybe a little
Yeah.
bit of hyperbole because it's been a minute, but that's what I refreshed myself on with that role one.
Yeah, like Stephen Colbert said it best. Like if he said something along the lines of, if Kyle Rittenhouse was found not guilty of breaking the law, then then the law has to be changed, because like at the end of the day, he's was what, 17 when he did it, and he crossed a
17.
state line. Like
Yeah.
that was rather intentional,
Right? Like
you
I
know.
had actually gone back and forth a little bit because okay, so a little side step here. I had shared something that talked about it was talking about the idea that if someone shoots randomly and hits three people, that for some reason it's okay as long as they had some kind of record. That's essentially what the meme I had shared was talking about, because I do talk a lot, even on my personal page. I go into a little bit how we discriminate against, the houseless, homeless, the people with prior convictions. I'm a big ban the box person. I want to say we've talked about that on this show
Oh
before,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
So just I was trying to share something to start a discussion about how we do as a culture seem to be okay with discriminating against people who have prior records. And I wanted it to open a conversation of more like, but yeah, we're and we'll get into this actually in a minute. I'm going to put a pin in that topic because that also has to do with this freaking court case. So, anywho, I was talking. It was something talking about that, like it doesn't make it okay. Vigilante justice is also just not okay, or something that I'm ever going to be okay with. And so it turned into this huge back and forth where, of course, they're trying to make me talk about the Rittenhouse case, and I keep trying to say like I was not commenting on the Rittenhouse case. I was not saying whether or not he was innocent or guilty. I was just trying to say that I think this argument is not relevant, because that seems to be the sweetheart argument of people who wanted him to be innocent, was that, the people he killed did things anyway. And I'm like, well, he didn't know that, when it happened. So totally freaking irrelevant from that side. And also, because he didn't know their background either way, B, also not relevant from the other side. Vigilante justice does not apply to these discussions. And I don't know why people bring it up every time there's a shooting. And that person who happens to be dead now happened to have a record, not knowingly had a record, and it had anything to do with why they became dead. But, that person that became dead for unrelated reasons happened to anyway. So that's what I had been going into. But I wound up going into a back and forth and kind of talking about it. And that's where I got into, first of all, I think it's really odd that they threw out this gun thing, right?
Yeah.
And I do agree. What you just said, based on intention based actions leading up to the situation, also screams that there is something wrong there. Okay. His parent did not like get him that AR to have, right? That wasn't like that they were that kind of household, because those households exist,
Mm-hmm.
right? Especially in a state that makes laws about like, here's a situation where your kid can carry a gun. Like they thought about that. That's the culture here. Let's be real, Wisconsin. So the parent didn't get it for him. Another a kid friend who was of technicality age got it for him. So there's an intent thing right there. You're not, as a child, you are not going through your parent for the parent thing you should be going through the parent for. You're sneaking around. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the bringing it to an environment that is going to be aggressive, intense, and have like that kind of powder keg mentality of going violent. So I question a lot of decisions that led to them being there.
Yeah, because let's be honest here. If we were talking about a 17-year-old black kid that brought the same type of rifle to a QAnon march, that kid would be dead. He wouldn't be in jail. I mean, he wouldn't have gone to trial. He'd be dead because the police would have taken him out. That is a
Yeah.
fact.
Well, and I'm gonna stick you there with sitting there saying that we can't technically name it as a fact, but at the very least, I do believe that the court system would have gone different had it not escalated to where the person had happened to die in the situation.
Mm-hmm.
I do not believe that the court would have played out the same way at all. And then that's the whole other slice of this is, it's super fun is being told repeatedly what you need to do. And I loved how many people kept telling me how I need to watch the court case and how I have to watch court.
Oh God, that
And
that yeah,
yeah, so
that pissed me off.
and here's the thing that I want to go on a little bit of a soapbox just for a second. And I feel bad because I feel like this is a Reverend soapbox episode. So I'm sorry if there's anybody out there that fucking hates me and just wants me to shut up right now. But so here's another thing that gets me every time there's a massive court case and people say how you need to watch it. And I played through this thought process with a couple of friends just to check my knowledge. Okay. So it does seem like as a culture, we understand that lawyers seem to be perceived as being about as crooked as a dog's hind leg. Like this seems to be something that both sides can agree on too on most days. Lawyers, not necessarily the straight and narrow. Got it. Another thing that we normally can seem to agree on both sides under most days is that, there's a direct relationship between how much money you can afford for a lawyer and how that outcome is going to turn.
Mm-hmm.
So we recognize these things openly on a day-to-day basis. And then the opportunity for public theater presents itself, and we all immediately forget and decide that we must watch this, we must consume it, and we must take in every detail, and totally forget the fact that, like, really both lawyers are at any point manipulating both sides, because that's what you're dealing with in the system that we have. And that's where I say, no, I don't have to watch it. I don't need to watch two lawyers make a lot of money and it be televised while they do it. And there's also a decent argument that the public court is kind of damaging in these situations too. Look at the times where it is somebody being socially skewed, and then we do find out later that they really, really, really were innocent, right? But it doesn't matter because they have been found socially guilty. And the one that I think of the most is the Boston bombing, the Boston Marathon bombing officer,
Mm-hmm.
who he got accused of being in on it, right? And he never was. Like, he wasn't in on it. In fact, he saved lives. But the way that man's life played out to the end was really sad because of being accused very openly and publicly and being found guilty by the public, even though he was never found guilty, by the way. Like, he never got a court to say he was guilty. He
Yeah.
was just already found societally guilty. So he never got a job in that work again. And he actually died before his defamation case was done. His mother saw it out.
Mm.
So it's like there's a lot of reasons I get really twitchy about these big court cases.
Yeah, and I mean, the law is complicated. You don't need me to tell you that, and it's like it's tough when decisions like this occur, especially when you have a judge that, to your point, seems to be cherry picking which rules a trial is going to go by, and whatnot. I think some things, to your point, yeah, I think I get upset at how people react to this, because, to your point, I did see a couple of the posts you made, and how, yeah, people were just very angry in terms of you. Basically, the whole impression I saw was, you don't see this from my point of view, so you are absolutely wrong unless you go to my approved news sources. And that's not how it works, because facts
No.
aren't manipulatable. Facts are facts. And ugh.
Yeah, I mean, that conversation actually did play out nicely by the end of it. It did turn around. I actually, at one point, stopped and said, I'm not going to go into that right now. Waited over 24 hours because I actually got busy. I didn't mean to do it. I meant to just put it till I could sleep in the next day
Right.
and actually sit down in front of a computer, because I do believe if you're going to say like kind of important opinions, you should be giving them good thought. And maybe that warrants more attention than swipey swipes on my phone screen. So I gave them my attention. We sat, we talked it out. It was really cool. I'm pretty sure it's another situation where I feel you've got your far ends on both sides and they're both a little bit wrong. But yeah, I've got opinion. I don't necessarily need to go into all of it as far as how I felt this should have been handled, other than I do think it's very, very strange that the judge decided to throw out the fact that this was breaking that law, and the heart of the exception in that law
Yeah.
was just willingly being turned a blind eye to. And it's a bummer, because really, if you think about it, the disservice is also to this kid in a way, because at the end of the day, a child child 17 chose to do this. And it's kind of a bummer that their attitude is that this child needs to go back to figuring out their life. And in my head, I'm like, well, this child didn't kind of do the good problem solving skills the first time. So is there any intervention here? Like, you'd kind of hope that this kid that chose to bring something, and then there's even also the case of, okay, they say self-defense, right?
Hmm.
Some might say that if you killed somebody in self-defense, it might be traumatizing. So I don't necessarily think that just because you killed somebody in self-defense doesn't necessitate some form of intervention of some type. I'm
Yeah.
not saying you should like put them up as like an example for all to see. And I know there were concerns about that happening to this kid, because I tried to listen to the both sides of the concerns, right? Because I get that. I don't want an example to be made of anybody. I think that's a horrible type of stance to take in certain situations, especially when you can't plug into their head and 100,000% know for a fact the intention behind which they did something.
Yeah.
So that's where like both sides kind of has their emotional pull, and it sucks because the job of the court is to look at the facts and the laws. And at the same time, I don't feel like that flipping happened either. So robbed.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that though. I mean, we did text about this a little bit, but you got to think back to a couple of different court cases in the past. The cops that beat Rodney King, they were found not guilty. And then afterwards, the federal government ended up charging them with some federal crimes. And then those officers ended up seeing some time after that. And then also the O.J. Simpson trial. He was found not guilty of murder. I mean, let's be honest, he did it, but he was found not guilty. And then afterwards, the Brown and Goldman family sued him in civil court. And what I see happening here is that I expect there will be a civil case brought against this kid, and
Oh
more.
yeah, I've
Yeah,
already seen some articles about that. So
yeah, because of and like the it's to your point too. It's like, yeah, the kid is 18. Like do I have sympathy for him? Not really, because he did put himself in that situation, but he's also a kid. I'm not
yeah.
just because he did that doesn't mean I'm not going to be an empathetic human being. But you know, his lawyers were bankrolled by conservative hack jobs. He had access to legal representation that he would not have had if he was just some joke, if he just shot a neighbor or something like that. Because this was politically charged, he had access to a legal system that he wouldn't have had normally. And I'll almost guarantee you that he's probably not going to have those same lawyers for any sort of civil trial that he has. So he's, I wish him the best, but his life is ruined. I mean, he thinks it's
Oh
all wine and
yeah.
roses. He
Like
thinks,
like if
yeah.
anybody thinks he's skipping out of this courtroom and going back to life as usual, like no, I'm sorry. That's the unfortunate other side of how this works. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the unfortunate, I do say it's unfortunate, even though there are people that will think inevitably that, he deserves to be skewered for the rest of his life. But there are also people who are genuinely innocent that get named innocent that also then still get to never return to their life. And a lot of that is because the pageantry and the theater that has become our court system.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this kid is not going to go back to a normal life. And in a way, that's where I will say that I kind of wish that had played out where he had just been found guilty of something so that something could actually be done. Instead, now he's going to end up being taken back to civil court. Like, I don't know. I just don't see what people would want from this, because you go to the liberal side, right? So the side that's the stereotype is that they wanted to see him go to jail. But at the same time, a lot of these liberal side are the people who are kind of aligned with me that jail should be like somewhat of a restorative and a path to get them rehabilitated. but the spite level at which it sounds like they want this person to just rot in a cell doesn't align to people that expect him to be able to get back out one day. So it's just a very confusing time anytime any of this stuff goes to court, because it's again where I sit there in the middle and I feel like, well, I'm gonna watch all my friends fight and secretly be thinking how I feel like they're both kind of wrong.
Yeah, and more than anything, what I'm scared of though is that I do think the government is going to step in as well and to kind of take a look at that judge, because this does present an interesting problem. He was found not guilty, and how this we know how bad the conservatives in this country can get. Look at January 6th. There are certain people on the conservative side of things who have no qualms about doing anything possible to maintain power, and there are people that see this as an open invitation to bring their own weapons and take out progressives that they disagree with. And that is scary. That needs to be addressed. And hopefully the government will step in. As far as the kid, you know like it is hard to kind of pull back and just kind of look at this as the two separate situations as it is, because
Yeah.
one, it does kind of crystallize what's been going on in this country with people that are trying to fight for the rights of other folks, for Black people in this country. And then you have the other folks like what Kyle Rittenhouse represented, the folks that are going to fight back against that. You have that, but then again, to your point, you also have a kid. And yeah, I don't feel comfortable stating, like there are people that said, he should have fried. Like he should have been punished. He needed to have been
Gosh.
punished for what he did. But it, like we've talked about it before too. Like if he can't buy a pack of cigarettes now, why should he be considered and treated like an adult when it comes to the legal system as well? His
Yeah.
brain, he's 17. No 17-year-old's brain is fully formed, no matter how mature they are. And obviously this kid, if he's traveling across state lines with a gun, he's not the most mature person around. This is just a fucked
Yeah.
up situation all around. I just hope that the general public can maybe take a breath here, because this is a powder keg. We are in some unique times here.
Yeah. And what's funny is, speaking of powder kegs, people that are possibly, pro gun or particularly pro AR, my humble opinion is, take a pause on celebrating this too much, because now what's interesting is an unfortunate thing that's happened. And just as a quick side thing, hey guys, I sometimes like to go shooting. I am personally a fan of guns. I've shot an AR before. They are incredibly fun hobby guns. I know people who have them. They are very Barbie-ish. Like, you can buy accessories. It can be ridiculous. Okay. So that all being said, the thing that has happened now that I'm wondering if we're going to see consequences for is, now we have a very big case that just labeled an AR as a self-defense gun. Now, what's interesting about that makes me kind of chuckle a little is, pro-gun, particularly pro-AR folks that have been arguing to keep this gun in the market and not made completely, no-go-ish, have really marketed it being more of a hobbyist gun, more of a collector's gun. It's more of an interest piece than something that you carry around, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now I wonder how much these guys are now shitting themselves, because this gun has now been associated with self-defense on a very big public case. So good luck to you guys. I'm sure there's going to be another scramble of get them now, I guess is what I'm saying. So I'm
Yeah.
curious if that plays out the way I think it's going to, because that was one of the concerns I had. And the other thing about it was that unless this child was normally carrying a gun for self-defense, I personally don't understand how that was applied in this sense, because that wasn't a normal self-defense tactic for this person. But it's also, anyway, I just don't think that they're a good self-defense gun. Like, to me, something that you have to have already aimed and ready is not a good reactive self-defense gun. But so
Yeah.
it might be interesting to see how that plays out on a political slash, if you have a gun interest to you, could be interesting to see how that has consequences, because I think there might be some.
There have been too many mass shootings involving AR-15s. I think we would need like a supermajority in Congress of Democrats for anything substantial to occur. And since Democrats love to grasp defeat from the jaws of victory, um, you know, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon in this country. Now, to your point, like I've made it clear, I'm not a person that thinks guns need to be totally banned either. I mean, I grew up in Michigan. I have family members that have guns, that treat guns with absolute respect. I think there are people that do have guns that treat them bad that should be arrested, blah blah blah. I think there should be other laws in place like licensing, background
Yep.
checks, but at the end of the day, if a person is deemed responsible enough to get a weapon, then they should get that weapon and also deal with any sort of consequences that come.
Yeah.
Because
I'm still trying to figure out how the term common sense gun reform got twisted to now be like that's like a trigger word for the opposite side of
there
it.
was
You
an
know what I
article.
mean?
There was an article that I posted on the group page. Somebody found a recording of an NRA meeting that happened right after Columbine. And what it was the whole beginning of their whole spiel, because what you will commonly hear among gun freaks when a situation like this occurs is that now's not the right time to talk about this. Let the families grieve. That was started because of Columbine. And it was Charlton Heston who suggested that. So Moses himself fucked us. You know? So it's like I don't know, like I we have a love affair in this country with guns that it's like, what is it, how many people are gonna have to die? I mean, we've had a kindergarten that was slaughtered in Sandy Hook, our next topic that we're going to talk about. We have tons of other shootings with AR-15s. Like, again, I don't think banning all guns is the solution here. That would be ridiculous. There was no need for that. But, should a 17-year-old ever be in a situation to where it's conceivable that he can get his hands on a weapon and cross a state line to start shooting people? I think that could have been nipped in the bud.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I love that the argument, my favorite one is, well, if you make them harder to get, well, then only the criminals will have them.
Oh.
I don't
No.
know. I guess if you guys really want to help our country, there's an officer shortage. Go apply. Go maybe figure out what that training is all about. Do it that way.
Then, well, most importantly, I mean, vote for the right people. And I don't mean vote all Democrat or anything like that. Vote for the right people that are going to have the country's best interest in mind. But while we currently have our wonder team in Congress, I don't think we're going to have anything like that. But let's move on to somewhat good news. Like I mentioned here, we did have some news in the Sandy Hook case. Mr. Alex Jones has been found liable and has been told he has to pay a lot of money to the parents of the Sandy Hook victims. That it makes me so happy.
Excuse me while I take a pause for the cause. Oh my God, that fucker has been in the news for so long for this Sandy Hook bullshit.
Yeah.
And I don't normally take joy in somebody just finally coming back to them, but that one was kind of just ridiculous. And I've long had a theory that he is just playing a character and very committed and that he knows what he's doing. But that's just my theory. I can't say that that's fact. So as long as I live in my reality for my theory, I am allowed to laugh at this person for that coming back and biting him right in the ass, right where it should. But I think you know more of the details. I just saw that this finally got done and he lost. And please enlighten those that don't know what happened here.
Yeah, I mean, there have been times where I've thought Alex Jones was playing a character. I mean, because in a lot of ways, his shtick is very much similar to like a televangelist. You can only get your news from me. You can only buy these products from me. You're helping America. You're helping God, and all that stuff. But with the Sandy Hook thing, when that occurred, he came out and said, it was a false flag operation. I mean, why? But and just causing these parents unknowable amounts of harm because his audience not the brightest people in the world, ended up like doxing these people, like harassing these people, telling them like their kids weren't dead or something stupid like that. And like all for what, like I think his claim was that it was like a false flag operation so they can take the guns and then like Democrats can like eat your babies or something like that. I mean,
Whatever
like,
it is he perpetuates. Yeah, it's a lot of
yeah.
ridiculousness. And I don't normally like support and cheer on anybody suing for like psychological damages. Like for the most part, I don't support that concept. But in a weird way, I did on this one just because I think he just had it coming somewhere. He had to have it coming somewhere. And because he's unfortunately, isn't he very well educated? Isn't he one of those ones? I might be mixing him up with another like talking head on that side,
Well, I
but
mean,
I'd have to look into it again.
I like I wouldn't say so. I mean, I've listened to enough of his show, and if for folks that are curious, there is a podcast out there called Knowledge Fight that I've talked about on the show here before that listens to Alex Jones, but then fact checks him. So if you are going to check him out, I would say check that out instead of actually listening to his shows. But it's like part of me thinks he may have some intelligence, but I also think there's a part. I just think he's insane. I think he's
Yeah.
had like a functional level of mental illness up until he started supporting Trump and then just went off the deep end. And now he has no choice. Like he has this occurred. And then of course he has a subpoena from Congress to talk about the January 6th thing. And there are plenty of news reports out there indicating that Alex Jones had a very big part to play in the whole January 6th thing. There's a guy on Twitter, Seth Abrams, I believe his name is, who's been on Trump's case the entire time and has done some work investigating the January 6th thing. What he talked about, what January 6th was supposed to do, it was supposed to be a delay tactic. It was supposed to last a couple of days so that 10 Republican states could decertify their results, which didn't happen, thank goodness. But, we were that close to, losing this country. Hopefully with the Sandy Hook thing and also with Alex Jones being brought in front of Congress, hopefully by next year we have a lot of arrests underway and we have a lot of more understanding of what happened on January 6th because Alex Jones is a dangerous human being.
And yeah, and not well educated, by the way.
Yeah.
Furthest he went was community college. So no, there's another talking head that
To
I got
be,
him confused with.
I got to be fair because of the professor. There's nothing wrong with the community college education.
But
It's
when you
not
say
Harvard, but
like,
yeah,
but when you say well educated in these pedigrees, you typically mean like, oh, they went to Harvard, and
yeah, no.
he made it as far, but he made it no further than me, folks. What can I say? Um, so keep in
I mean,
mind
yeah.
that's where I didn't even finish, so I mean probably further than me.
But yeah, I mean, like Alex Jones at the end of the day is a dangerous human being because of the fact that for so long he's been able to spew his lies unchecked. And
Yeah.
hopefully the Sandy Hook ruling and also being dragged in front of Congress, he may try to pull what I could see him doing probably to avoid this if he can is moving to a state like Florida like OJ did, because I guess with the laws the way that the way they are there, like OJ is able to keep his hands on like his NFL pension, unlike any other state, which is why he stays in Florida.
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, I don't know. You're telling a Texan to leave Texas, so good luck there.
But these people have no loyalty to anything like that. He is going to, like, if he gets any sort of serious trouble, like if the government like really arrested him, you don't think Alex Jones isn't gonna sing? Come on, he's a little
Oh
bitch.
yeah.
you know
He'll
it,
he'll he'll catch flights, not feelings. He'll Ted Cruz that move.
or he'll probably just like on air like do like our Bud Dwyer from the 80s and shoot himself. That would be great. you know
Oh,
you
we'll
know
take a moment to say that no, that's never the answer, and that's never great. But I get your hyperbole. It's the hyperbole show today.
yeah. Speaking of hyperbole, John Cleese.
Oh yes, my prince of hyperbole. How is he doing? Is he in trouble yet?
Well, he had a little fun in Australia. I guess he was scheduled to do a talk in Australia, but then he found out that something happened at a particular school he was at. And I got the article up right here. Okay. Yeah. Cleese said, I apologize to anyone at Cambridge who was hoping to talk with me, but perhaps some of you can find a venue where woke rules do not apply. I guess there was a professor at this college who, um, and I'm not finding any articles, so I'm paraphrasing here, but this professor did something that made the students think he was defending Hitler in some way, shape, or form when the professor said he was not doing that. And then the professor ultimately had to apologize for, there we go. Being an art historian, he made interesting points about how Hitler hated modern art and the Nazis ripped Cubist and abstract works off gallery walls. The Nazis saw these forms of art as connected with gay, Jewish, and African people, according to Graham Dixon, so they annihilated the art before moving on to annihilating themselves. He was trying to make the point that good taste exists because bad taste does, and bad taste is rooted in bad morals, which, whatever. I didn't hear the guy's thing, but it sounds like he was trying to make a point. So who knows if he made it successfully or not. Maybe the students had every right. I don't know. I'm going to be fair, but Cleese has made it a point to not go to this particular college because of this particular instance. And, we've talked about Cleese before on the show, including his comment about stupid people before and woke culture. But, here we are. Like, what do you think?
I I can't help but love John Cleese. I understand. He seems very frustrated. Like even following his Twitter lately, he's a lot more political than I kind of remember him being in prior years,
Mhm.
especially around some of the stuff with COVID. But yeah, he's kind of always had a really low tolerance, right, for this idea that just because you are offended, that you should get to skewer the person that made you feel offended. And I guess that's the best way I could put like kind of his feelings or how I've interpreted, his lessons around that stuff or his feelings around those things. Cause yeah, there was that meme I had made from a quote that I would probably paraphrase terribly. Maybe I'll look it up while you're saying something in a minute. But that he has to think to himself when he's making a joke is this going to be a good joke or is it going to offend a few stupid people? Because if the answer is the latter, well, I'm sorry, stupid people, but there are certain disadvantages to being stupid. And that is like the best quote that I feel encapsulates how he handles a lot of this stuff. So I feel like in this situation, he seems like he was annoyed that this teacher had to apologize for trying to teach a lesson.
Yeah.
And you can see where it's like he's applying that, well, his students were stupid. Like, you know what I mean? Like his quote of there are certain disadvantages to being stupid, not saying somebody being stupid is an insult,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
just saying in that moment, I could see him interpreting that situation of, oh, well, his students are stupid. And then the school turns around and doubles down by being stupid back. And I think that's what he's actually against is not so much that the students had an issue with it, but it sounds like he had an issue with the school actually doing something and making a teacher apologize for a lesson that seems to had not been taken by the students properly. Or
Yeah.
maybe like did the students bother asking in class to have a discussion, because it's been a minute since I've been in college, but it used to be if something was said in a sense that way, especially in a more philosophical class, that you would then open up and have a discussion about that and then come to, however you felt really at the end of it, because sometimes classes aren't about teaching fact. Sometimes it is about teaching how to interpret art and different ways of interpreting art, which it
Mhm.
sounds like that's what this teacher was touching on.
Yeah.
So I don't think there was a right or wrong way to teach it. And I kind of can't help but agree with Cleese that it feels like a teacher being kind of punished for a conversation not necessarily landing in a class like seems weird when the intention was not to teach an untruth, and the intention was definitely, it doesn't seem like it was to encourage some form of hate or be like, hey, yay, Hitler.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it doesn't sound like that. Like, come on, even I've got like the super bad joke of like, the Volkswagen Beetle is proof that not all of Hitler's ideas were bad. But just throwing it out there, that was his invent. Go Google it.
Yeah.
But no, that's not saying that he had all awesome ideas. It is a joke. Granted, this wasn't a joke. This was somebody trying to teach something. So just as I don't think I should be skewered for an obvious hyperbole joke, I don't think the teacher, I mean, at least he didn't get like fired or anything completely excessive. So, I mean, some could say that Cleese is being a little princessy by not going, but at the same time, it's his choice. If he doesn't support what that school does, then he doesn't have to continue with his plans there. And if he's got consequences that happen after, I'm sure his pocketbook will allow for it. But
Yeah.
that's his deal with, not ours.
Yeah, I mean, similar to the people that are like yelling at Ice Cube for not taking a movie because they were gonna like require a COVID vaccination. Like, like that's on him. I don't agree with his decision, but and he lost out on $9 million. But obviously, I don't think he's hurting for money either. But
No.
as far as Cleese in this situation, I do notice that, and I know comedians have talked about this, that it seems like colleges used to be a place where comedians love to go, but now they're avoiding like the plague because yeah, it does seem like the college students these days are not as receptive to comedy, at least as it used to be per se. And I do think that there is some points to be made from the comedians that sometimes people can be a little too pissy. Not
Yeah.
everything needs to be like something you march in the streets for. A joke can just be a joke, as Freud would paraphrase.
Yeah.
But I also do think that it's not a bad thing for comedians to think. I mean, we've talked about the Cleese quote before, and I think one, like, obviously I don't know that quote comes from. I don't know the interview, so he may have already addressed my concerns. But the thing that when I see that quote from him that I wish he had followed up with was, but the person who is making that joke should ask themselves, should they? Because we are finding out now. It's not, I shouldn't say finding out now, it's like people are now like listening now to other people, find, so hearing stuff like, maybe those jokes you make about women aren't as good, or maybe these jokes you make about these people aren't as good. And you got a point.
You said it though. Cleese already covered it in the first part of the quote. Is it a good joke? A
Mm,
bad joke should not be told, but a good joke should. So is it a good joke,
yeah.
or are a few stupid people going to take it the wrong way? So see, I mean, and I haven't, and people can correct me if I'm wrong.
Hmm.
So far, I have not heard a bad John Cleese joke. Now, there may have been some that did not age, and I will always argue that that is different.
Yeah, you haven't seen Fierce
But
Creatures. No.
but yeah, there are things that don't age. But as far as in the time when you take in the culture and all the considerations one should take in when anything is written, including a joke, whether
Mhm.
it is good should also incorporate whether it should be told or not. So I
And
totally get you, but I just
yeah,
wanted to put it out there. I think he did encapsulate that in that quote.
well, there we go. Ultimately, too, I mean, comedy is meant at times to challenge you.
Exactly. Art too, by the way,
Mhm.
like also to challenge. But that's where it's like interesting to me that we've lost that appreciation for the comedy. Like my favorite was when people would nag about why are they so political? I'm like, well, it comes from the jester, which was the court jester, which was oftentimes trying to make jokes in a palatable way to the king to sometimes help with change. So if you look at some of the far deep background of comedy, and if you realize that is a lot of intention of a lot of comedians, is a lot of times comedians are making jokes about about the fact that it is that way, not to encourage it being that way, but to deflect with humor the reality in which something is.
Mhm.
And now there are some asshole comedians out there that are just kind of assholes and saying things. And personally, I just don't think there's that many that are good, that even make it to that point.
I mean,
Uh, you've even
I,
got hyperbolic characters that exist too that are making fun of the fact that people believe certain things that they believe.
well, you do have people though. I mean, we brought it up on the book club. We read the book Shrill from Lindy West, and one of the stories she brought up was the Daniel Tosh controversy. Do you remember about 10 years ago? Like he was in a club and made some jokes about rape that were not taken well.
I think I recall this, but not 100%.
Yeah, she was on a talk show with Jim Norton and kind of talking about the situation. And Jim Norton's attitude, I think, kind of bothered me when I saw it. I mean, by the look on your face, it sounds like you have an opinion about him to begin
Oh,
with.
I've seen him live. He's an interesting fella. So go ahead. I'm curious. I'm
Yeah.
more just curious to hear what he did and started to cringe because he's a little rough around the edges sometimes.
Well, he was basically his whole thing was that again, I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said that comedians should have the freedom to say whatever joke they want because it's just a joke. And again, not taking into account that, again, not every joke should be said per se, and just his response was shitty. Let's put it that way. It's like
Yeah.
he didn't take into he wasn't acknowledging the fact that there are times when a comedian will say a bad joke. Like Sarah Silverman, I saw a great video with her. Like somebody asked her, like, are there is there material like from your older stuff that you still support? And she talked about her stand-up special Jesus is Magic, and she said that there were some racial jokes on there that she listens to now, she absolutely cringes at, because she said her intention was good, but she didn't execute it in a way, hindsight being 2020, that made it a joke that would last. And she said it would be a joke that would not she would not do today. And honestly, I want to hear more comedians talk like that than
Right.
than
And
Jim
that's
Norton. Yeah.
but if we had kind of the culture that was open to that, instead of you said something that made me feel something, so now I'm never going to support you again. Like, first of all, no relationship functions that well. Like, if we did that with every friendship and every family member, we'd be some lonely motherfuckers out here.
Yeah.
But and granted, I do have that overall theory that you can apply most relationship things to most things because everything is a relationship in a sense. Like,
Mhm.
whether we like it or not, we as consumers have a relationship with our entertainers. And I sure wish that relationship were healthier, because that relationship feels really shitty and unhealthy right now. And that they're so like there's a whole bunch of them that are so afraid to say the wrong thing that we have no idea what kind of content we're missing out on that could open somebody's eyes. Like we have discussed, it challenges you, right? But
Mhm.
people are afraid to make challenging content right now because we're afraid that our bags are already half packed and going to be kicked out. Like, there's jokes and topics I don't want to breach on the show just because, I mean, I'm not nobody yet. So I don't think I have the backing to be able to earn them back if I were
Yeah.
to say something challenging enough that pissed off the wrong person. So there is that little bit of awareness. But I think the reason that Tosh's comment even rubs me wrong is that sounds like somebody that's asking for no consequences. And that's not a reality that we live in. You have the freedom to joke about whatever you want. We actually do live in that reality. But what you're asking for is not the freedom to make a joke. You're asking for pre-permission to offend people as much as you want and not have any consequences if you accidentally go too far.
Yeah.
Because Tasha's style of comedy is offensive attacking. He does that. He is an offensive style. And he's one of those that I still can't figure out if he's making fun of the fact that people think that way or if he's an asshole. So he's
Yeah.
one of those that I can't tell.
I get the impression that he has studied at the feet of Don Rickles. I mean, he's like a frat boy Don Rickles.
Okay.
Because yeah, to your point, he does rip into everybody. I haven't seen any sort of like one-on-one interviews with him to where he's him. Anytime I've seen him, it's always been like Tosh.0 or his
Right.
stand-up gigs where he's
And he's a very narcissistic character. Like if I
Yeah.
get the sense he's doing a character and slash I hope he's doing a character.
Yeah.
But it does feel like if he's doing a character, he's playing into that high end of narcissism because I can't recall ever hearing him doing a self-deprecating joke, and that's usually a telltale shtick of the playing the high end. There's nothing.
Well, I mean, I think he has in some ways. I mean, I used to watch his show Tosh.0 a lot, and I think it's on his delivery. Like when he tells a joke, you can tell in his eyes, I guess, when he's just like not being serious, when he's having fun or whatever. But that's a different story for a different day. But
anywho, I get with his style of comedy why
it's
he
not
would
going to be
say
for
something
everybody.
like that. But but the thing is no, I'm sorry, if your style of comedy is saying offensive things, you're going to have to realize that you may say the wrong offensive thing at some point and it not have the value. Because you could say something offensive as long as it has value at the end to those people. But if you say it and it has no value to anybody, even your fan base, that would be called the consequence of going too far.
And if you find yourself in that spot, just be a good human being and just take a time to reflect. See if this is something that you should apologize for, or if this is something that you should stick to your guns. But when it comes to stuff like cancellation, let's remember the fact that both Louis C.K. and Dave Chappelle have been nominated for Grammys this year. So I don't know if cancellation is really truly as big of a deal as certain politicians love to make it out to be. I think when it comes to a lot of this too, especially with the Cleese thing, a lot of times social media makes it think like there may be a problem too when there really isn't, because a lot of social media stuff is just preaching to the choir. Like the people that were going to rip into a comedian for saying a joke weren't going to see that comedian anyway, let's be honest.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, there I think are few people who were actually turned when something happens. Like, granted, no, I haven't gone back or supported Louis C.K. And I even talked about on the show that I felt conflicted giving money to see his special, even though he is someone that I traditionally liked. He is somebody who very much did a lot of self-deprecating humor and seemed to kind of acknowledge on stage that he was kind of a fucked up person. So it was also kind of a moment of not being particularly surprised when it came out. But so you can't just expect no consequences ever. That's just not a world that we're going to live in, I don't think.
Yeah, you can't expect no consequences, but like similar to the Rittenhouse thing and how people are arguing online, like you also can't necessarily take what you're seeing online, the discussions that people are having, as a reality, honestly, because again, if it's only happening within the sphere of social media, yet in the case of like Louis C.K. and Dave Chappelle, they're, despite the horrible things that they've done, they're still getting massive crowds. Like, it's like, why participate? Why get revved up in this type of stuff about celebrities, unless you have a podcast, of course? Why get yourself that revved up over nothing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's really just because this is getting an emotional response from somebody equals some kind of monetary value to a lot of people. So that's really why I think we get a lot of stuff marketed at us so that we know to be aware of it, because as long as enough people are aware of any situation, you're going to have a divide, and then they get to argue over it. And then it leads to shares on articles, and then it leads to clicky clicks and ads playing here. Yeah. So I don't know. This is why I, by and large, don't participate much in it, folks. It's just
kind of pointless in a lot of ways.
and draining, right? Like, I don't know. I used to participate a lot more in it, and it was just exhausting to be mad every other week. And I'm not saying like that the ignorance is bliss mentality. I'm saying there's definitely a middle path here.
Yeah, and that middle path is like not like I'm not going to engage in like I'm going to post my political opinions on social media, but if somebody were to respond back to me like, what do you think that way, how dare you, they're getting a block or a mute or something. Like, I'm not going to engage. Like, why? I'm like, there is nothing I'm going to say to a complete stranger that's coming into my social media mentions yelling at me because I said something that offended them. There's nothing that I'm going to say, and vice
Nope.
versa.
And they're not looking to be talked to about anything. They're just looking for a fight. So don't give it to them. And then every now
Yeah.
and then, as long as you're open to talking about stuff, you will get responses from people of an opposing opinion that you can then have a conversation with. I've had some really great conversations. Even some of them that started off like, oh my God, is this going to be the thing where I finally unfriend this person? Is this going to be the thing that we have a fight over and we don't talk again? And I
Yeah.
don't want that ever. So far I've been kind of proud of my friend picking that for the most part they've turned into like some good stuff. But I am kind of tired of the liberal tears memes and just the stuff that's just shared just to have somebody react negatively on your page. Like those are the people that I've kind of started like, all right, well, I'm putting you on restricted because I don't want to hear about it. Why did you delete me? So I just put people on restricted. Life hack. If you didn't know you could do that, just move them over there. It's basically the same thing.
Or even a simple unfollow.
Yeah.
You're not removing the friend, but
You're
you're
just
not seeing
unfollowing.
their like. I That's why I've been able to stay Facebook friends with my aunt for as long as I have.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I guess the aggressive people that like get on there and like start arguing with your other friends. Like if you're sharing political stuff on the friend level, but you don't want to
Oh, no,
remove them,
no.
you
Yeah,
can you can put them on restricted and then they will only see public facing things. So as long
yeah.
as you post something public, they won't even know that you're not friends with them anymore.
Well, let's end things on a positive note here. We heard some good news last week that we would be remiss if we did not bring it up. One Miss Britney Spears is finally free.
Free, yay! A round of applause. I just think it's interesting that that's something that's kind of been a bit of a journey on this show because I remember bringing up the Free Britney thing mostly because I was just shocked that it was a thing.
Yeah.
And now it's like there's been updates to it and now she's done. It's over now. And I did see kind of something interesting shared on that. Being somebody who tries to be as trauma informed as I can be, I wanted to throw it out there that it was shared, and I don't think they're wrong because oftentimes when you're in a situation of trauma or being highly controlled like in situations like this and then you suddenly have freedom, mistakes can sometimes happen. So there is a little bit of concern expressed, not by a lot of people, because I haven't seen like posts and posts, just an interesting point
Yeah.
that we very well may see something. And I seriously and sincerely hope it doesn't ever turn into a, well, she never should have gotten out of the conservatorship. But
Yeah.
today I am happy for her and I hope she makes really great decisions and that doesn't happen. But there was an interesting point brought up of I really hope she nails it, but there is kind of a chance that something might happen. But either way, I hope to smile upon her as she now gets to be free from this weird toxic level control over her life, being forced into doing shows, having no choice whether you want to have children or not. Like that's really almost being dehumanized for years. And I hope she comes out of it okay, feeling like a good whole human again.
I mean, yeah, like imagine having your father treat you like a commodity for 13 years. That's uh, like my understanding. And there's Nutty the squirrel. Anyway, on the fence out there, but
Literally, squirrel.
yeah, but apparently, from what I understand, I guess there is talk that she's going to sue her dad, and I hope that's the case. Hopefully it does lead to somewhere. And to your point, I don't. care how much she messes her life up. It's like she has a right to fuck her life up if she wants. She should not have been in that particular spot for 13 years.
It's too long.
That was extremely excessive and just ridiculous that a person of sound mind and body who put out as many hit albums as she did, who and think about all it's someone who works in creative aspects. You of all people can appreciate the amount of work it takes to be able to be the type of dancer she was, to be able to do the type of singing she does. That's not something you can necessarily do if you're not of sound mind and body. That takes dedication, that takes hard work. And but again, she's free. Even if she fucks up, that's her right. you know
Exactamundo. It sure as shit is. So like I said, I'm excited. I was super stoked when it just kind of came across my awareness, and I was like, oh my God, Britney's free. Like, that's amazing. She's finally free. It shouldn't
Yes.
have taken all of this. It's kind of almost criminal in its own sense, but I get it. I'm assuming she probably has a lawyer that has given her some steps to try to rake back her life from her father. That it doesn't really look like he had a lot of good intentions here. Like, as much as I try to find that in most people, I struggle. I won't say that I know, but I
Yeah.
will say that I kind of understand why we're still going, because some of it is the fact that he's taken years of money. So I'm sure for getting her life started as an adult again, she's going to need something to get started again. So it very well, I would assume, have to do with that. But it is
Yeah.
interesting to sue the dad. I'd actually read an article, fun fact about a Sir William Smith. Um, I had learned that his mother had sued his father for back child support, like for over $100,000. I think it was $140,000.
Hmm.
And he apparently paid for it. Like, that Will Smith chose to pay his dad's back support or whatever that he got sued for because he didn't want his dad to go to jail. So it's just kind of interesting that I just read like this kind of opposite idea of and it doesn't sound like he had like the best relationship with his dad, just throwing that out there. Like, it doesn't sound like that any other reason than he just decided he didn't want his dad to go to jail or have to pay that.
Right.
But anywho's, but I totally see why she would be doing it though. It really kind of makes sense because it goes into, you've been over a decade of somebody just basically using you like a thing, just objectifying you and using you for the income. So I'm sure, considering that she won the case and is now free, I have a hunch she's gonna get some back pay. And I don't blame her at all in this situation because it sounds like that's the cleanest cut she's going to have to make a true different life for herself.
Yeah. And from what it sounds like, I mean, she may not even continue to sing anymore. I mean, it sounds like she just wants to live life. So if like she goes to like Italy and lives in a villa somewhere and we never see her again, I hope she's happy.
Get it, Britt.
Yeah.
Get it.
All right. So I think that will wrap us up this week. Now, starting next week, we are going to be doing something special. Do you want to tell folks what that is?
Yes, we're going to watch Big Mouth and talk a lot about it again.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, we're Big Mouth season 5 has already debuted on Netflix. So similar to what we did with season 4, we are going to be going through and reviewing each episode. We are going to use a different format this time. So we want to be able to try and bring a little bit more personal stories out in this, which I think we can do. But I am definitely excited for that, and that will start next week.
I'm stoked. I think it's fun because it is a little bit of the bringing up personal anecdotes and kind of almost unpacking our childhoods, which I hope some of you guys are enjoying that, maybe even joining along with us and understanding of like, oh yeah, there is a lot to relate to, and we were raised under some weird situations sometimes.
Oh
But
yes.
yeah, and then it's also that little bit of side of I get to nerd out about like psychology and stuff that we get to see. So I get excited to do these. Big Mouth is a really good show, so I've super enjoyed it.
Yes, I've not seen the entire season as of yet, but I've seen the first few episodes, and I know they are definitely touching, like, it'll be interesting to talk about stuff like the love bugs, for instance.
Oh, yes, I did love the love bugs and the hate worms. We'll get to those too. It'll
Yes.
be a really good season. And I really kind of like some of the stuff they got into because I think a lot of it's even crazier relevant than normal to kind of the stuff going on with like social media and stuff like that. So
Right.
it's good that they dug into that. I have already binged it. It is getting cold and dark early here in Maine. So the Mr. Reverend and I have been binging a little bit more than normal. I mean, so far we've torn down Big Mouth already. We've taken down the entirety of What We Do in the Shadows, which is a great show if you've never watched it. It's funny. And now we are all about The Great, which is funny because I've mentioned that I don't like it when they go hyperbolic and take too much liberties with real people.
Mhm.
But I think this retelling and reimagining of Elizabeth the Great is probably one of my favorites, or Queen Elizabeth, I mean. But yeah, so it's a delight so far. We're tearing through that one, and I am excited to also see what else comes out because it's cold and it's winter, and I'm ready to stay in my cave.
Oh yeah, like last night, Hawkeye, the new Marvel TV show, debuted on Disney Plus, and tomorrow night I'm excited. It's going to be the start of Peter Jackson's Beatles documentary, Get Back, on Disney Plus. It's going to happen 3 nights, and what that is, in 1970 there was a movie that came out for the Beatles album Let It Be, and people thought that it showed like the breakup of the band, but Peter Jackson went in and saw all of the footage and kind of reorganized it to give a better understanding of what happened to the Beatles on one of their last albums. So I'm definitely excited for that one. And again, Big Mouth.
Yeah, Big Mouth. Get to I'm gonna enjoy watching it again. It was a good season, so I'm not going to mind at all.
All right. So, yeah. So, with that, I think we'll wrap things up. Thank you all for listening. Every Wednesday and Saturday, we will have something to entertain you in this space. Thank you all for listening. And until we see you again, we bid you adieu.
Have a good night, guys.
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy on iTunes, the Google Play Music Store, as well as Spotify. Remember to support Friends Talking Nerdy on Patreon. Goodbye, darling.